Mr. Freeze has had a lot of incarnations over the years. Arnie, classic Toon Freeze, and my personal favourite, the Arkham Freeze. Sidebar, that boss battle was actually one of the coolest and most chilling, no pun intended, boss battles. Having to figure out different ways to beat them every time. Simply cool. Arkham games are just fucking goated. Anyways, new Batman issue. So let's talk about it.
Sometimes you gotta close the door to open a window.
Like I talked about earlier, there's been many iterations, but Absolute Batman's version is perhaps maybe the most unsettling version. You see, every other version mostly just comes across as just a man in a suit, realistically. He's just a dude with freeze powers in a suit. But this version feels like it's something prehistoric, uncanny valley type vibes, alien grey. But we'll get into that soon. But this chapter opens up with Bruce being dragged through the hallway by Mr. Freeze. And the first thing that I noticed was how this panel was set out. It paints a complete and utter picture of Bruce being dragged as if we're looking through a window into the present, but also these two little panels here give us a window into the past. And it's that past here that we get to see as a back end of a conversation that we saw in chapter 7, where Waylon is telling Bruce that if he walks away now, he will die. But as the conversation continues into this chapter, we see Waylon telling him there's no getting out of this one. It's almost like a fourth wall break. It's almost like Waylon is acting like a narrator to explain Bruce's dire situation to us, the reader, right now, as Freeze drags Bruce into a room filled with chambers. Holding a knife, he cuts Bruce's clothes off him, pinky, before dumping him into a tub. Now, Bruce obviously is going to fight and tries to grab Freeze by the neck, only to be overpowered by Freeze, who grabs his hand right back, and we see blue veins appearing on Bruce's hands, like he's freezing. Remember, it's like sort of canonical that Freeze's hands and Freeze's skin just sort of freezes anything, however he touches it. We get to see that a little bit later on in this chapter as well. Also, by the way, sidebar, take a shot every time I say freeze. You're gonna have a good time with this video. Eventually, he passes out and wakes up in said chambers that he walked into here. Now, I gotta say, this dude is a fucking mutant. Like, I know he's Batman and everything, but good lord, this dude looks like Batman ate Batman. Anyway, he wakes up and realizes where he is, with Mr. Freeze telling him, I hope you enjoyed your rest. There won't be any sleeping in the ice after all. The pain won't let you. I like the idea of Scott Synder making Mr. Freeze Absolute Batman's first superpowered villain to fight against. I know Black Mask was like the first villain, but like this is like his first superpowered villain to fight against. Now, pain is a pretty consistent factor in Batman's story. It's almost always internalized pain, trauma, and whatnot from his past, excluding physical pain from fights. But with Mr. Freeze, it's like physical pain from like literally being frozen. He's just constantly like there. And it's a nice little contrast to the situations. Now, I'll swing back around to this in a second. It's quite cool. No pun intended on the Freeze there. But Freeze starts the process of freezing Bruce and tells him to look around. You're in high company. There's some of Gotham's wealthiest members of the Powers family and the Gates. All of them came here at the end of their lives believing the ice would be an escape. For some reason, this little segment reminded me of the Court of Owls, like finding Gotham's elites were all just gathered in one spot, but instead here they're frozen instead. But I also find it ironic how Batman in this world has no riches, no wealth like he traditionally does, but he's still finding himself being stuck and frozen with all of the people who did have the wealth and riches. It's quite funny to me. And what's more than that, Freeze also describes the ice's vengeance, which again I found quite interesting for Bruce, considering Bruce and Batman as like vengeance, and it's like a whole thing, and now the ice's vengeance and it's getting him. It's like his main timeline traits are like coming back to haunt him with this absolute universe. Like, no matter how hard you try, you can't stop these traits from like appearing. It's quite cool. It's like how the Darkseid universe created Superman. He wants to get rid of Hope, but you can't really stop it from appearing because obviously now Kal-El's there and he resembles Hope. It's an interesting little tie-in that goes on. Anyways, Freeze begins to freeze Bruce and tells him, now your temperature drops. You might feel a burning. Hypothermia scrambles the brain's thermoregulation. It's why so many people freezing to death remove their clothes. Don't worry though, soon the suffering will pass beyond hot or cold. Of course, for the first 30 years or so, all you'll want is death. But after that, hopefully, if you're like me, you'll come to accept it, even love it. The pain. And after saying that, we're thrust back into the flashback. Now, interestingly, Freeze tells Bruce he'll come to love the pain, and as he's experiencing pain, both physical and emotional, at the end of it, he comes to have this realization that his friends, who I would assume he loves, are right about his actions and how he's going about certain things within the series right now. Now, I mentioned this in the last video, I made, but this version of Batman, I really like how this Batman is characterized. Rather than like this solitude, riddled, brooding Batman, his friends are somewhat somewhat affect the decisions and influence his actions. And I know that does happen in other Batman stories, but it feels more pushed to the surface here. It does feel like we're rooting for the underdog and a group of friends here, and I like that kind of story. Now, considering how stubborn Batman is canonically, it does feel like a nice change of pace to see Bruce handle his friends with some human decency, I guess, and actually take advice and grow from that. In a weird way. I'm having trouble trying to word it. Maybe someone in the comments can help me out how I'm trying to word it here. But that flashback between Waylon and Bruce carries on as Bruce tells Waylon, "Don't make me hate you." To which Waylon responds, "You can try, but if you leave now, you'll know better than Matches was." Questioning this, Bruce is told he's a coward, and so too is Batman. Now, something I really enjoy here is that there is no faces going on in these scenes, but yet despite that, you can still tell what's going on in their faces regardless. You can still get the emotions from the way that they're drawn and the way that the text is written out. But Bruce attacks Waylon and was sent back to the present. Again, we keep flipping back and to and from with these, where we see Bruce's eyes turn into the same color as Freeze's as we see these blue veins, presumably who are freezing him, creeping up. Now, as he thinks to himself, every single cell shrieks. There's no room for anything else anymore. No feeling but this. No thought but this. I am nothing but agony. As I mentioned earlier, Freeze and Batman's dynamic is interesting to me due to like Freeze's physical pain and now Batman's emotional pain and mental. And that's kind of displayed hand in hand right here because we see Bruce screaming in pain surrounded by the following things: a skull, a gun, Gotham, a bat, and his child self. And I love the little subtext of this chapter. Like, it's like the physical pain causes Bruce to deal with his emotional pain and sort of move past it. It's kind of how he has like this revelation or like realization that like Waylon was right within these like chapters here, within these flashbacks. We also do get to see Waylon and Bruce fighting, a fight that Bruce surprisingly actually loses after being kicked to the ground. I wonder if that's going to be foreshadowing for when Waylon actually turns out to be Killer Croc later down the line, because that's kind of like the sub storyline that's going on here. We're kind of watching like a slow burner of friends to enemies, whether they want that to happen or whether it's like going to be forced upon them, who knows. All while Waylon is telling Bruce his mission to the Black Mask's boat was actually just a suicide mission, and so too is this one, which ironically is completely true. Anyways, we do get to see this massive double spread of Bruce slowly being frozen, and while it's happening, a few things are happening. Number one, he's using the cast that he had in the previous chapter that Freeze mistakenly left on him instead of ripping it off, to fire off mini bat blades at the window to break the glass. And then two, he's also dealing with Match's involvement in his dad's death. You see, it's revealed the reason Batman's dad didn't actually make it back to safety way back when in the zoo is because he went to rescue a kid who turned out to be Matches. We actually see that in chapter 1, which I thought was quite cool. Who Matches had then held on to this fact, and he'd held on to the fact that had he not fallen, Bruce's dad would have survived. And obviously that's not his fault, out of his control, but this led Matches down a path of self-destruction, one that Waylon fears Bruce is also going down. Classic Batman self-destructing, who knows. Anyway, eventually Bruce cracks the glass to this tank here, and we switch back to Freeze, who is speaking to a mystery voice on the other side of the computer. Now, if I had to bet, it is going to be some dudes from Arkham, which I'll get back to in a second because that becomes relevant at the end of the chapter. But Freeze mentions this snowfall of his is carrying markers in the crystals, and it will allow whomever he's speaking to read anyone whose skin who's been touched by that snow. Again, that'll all be relevant soon, but what's no longer relevant is the door that Batman just kicked through, because honestly, I really fucking love this panel. I really fucking love this panel. It's like a brand new Batman, but a classic knock knock Batman's here joke. Kind of reminds me like Adam West Batman, the way like the text is done. I don't know if that's what Snyder went for here, but that's kind of what it reminds of. But you know what else I love? What comes next? Batman activating a flame on his hand, exactly where his middle finger would pop up, was just a nice little cheeky jab, asking him, you know, I heard you like pain. Anyway, Freeze and Batman begin to fight here, with Freeze lunging at his face after Bat's dodging it and burning Freeze's face, and he notes a few things: how fast Freeze is and how cold he is. He, by Batman, I mean, that's what I mean here. He even notes just how strong Freeze is. The muscle tissue is petrified and fibrous, which isn't something I often imagine about ice. I always often it to be like breakable, fragile. I always think about ice, but then I suppose the more condensed ice you get, the more solid it can be. It's more like fucking concrete at that point. So I imagine this is kind of the angle that they're going for here. But despite trying to hide how much he's shivering, Batman decides he needs to slow down Freeze. Aiming for the nerves, Freeze dodges this attack almost effortlessly, and he does this by grabbing the wall and the ceiling, freezing the area he touches, allowing himself to stick to the wall. And remember earlier at the beginning of the video where I said absolute freeze gives me the creeps, almost like uncanny valley? This This is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about right here. Clinging onto the walls like some lanky, grotesque freeze freak. He's just so creepy. And this panel also gave me PTSD. If you're a manga enjoyer and you know Jujutsu Kaisen, that's what this panel gave me PTSD over Mahito and Nobara. Oh, PTSD, man. But after grabbing Batman, he flies him into a wall, breaking it, and a piece of Batman, who notes rotator cuff shot, and I can feel 2 ribs splintering as I breathe. And now we get a brief flashback to Waylon offering Bruce a hand in getting back up. And again, I want to point out how creepy this fucking dude looks. I mean, look at this dude. He's literally crawling around the walls and onto his computer like some sort of four-armed, like some sort of quadrupedic spider. He's creepy as hell. Anyway, it turns out that it's not just Freeze who's been chilling in this building. No pun intended. Now, remember when I said it reminded me of the Court of Owls? You get my vibes here. This is kind of the wavelength that I'm on here. Anyways, all these frozen freaks show up and start attacking Batman, who obviously attacks back. And as he does this, he's realizing these people who are frozen are actually just falling apart, and you can see the look of horror on Batman's face. He's kind of shocked by this. He did just punch a dude's jaw off, kind of not something you want happening, but he is horrified by this, but remembers what Freeze said. While you're inside these tanks, all you'll think about is death, and that's kind of what Batman uses to sort of justify what's going on here, saying, they're fallen apart in my hands, but they keep coming like they want me to. And it's kind of like he's rationalizing the actions here. Like, he's literally just punched the dude's skull in here. And it's here we get to see the final part of this flashback with Bruce and Waylon and the gang, who are commemorating matches, saying the following: Bruce, do you want to die? Because your dad, he didn't want to die, and it isn't his death that made him a hero, it was his life. Asking him if he wants to die. And he's asked this question as we see him getting overwhelmed by these freeze freaks who are attacking him here, to which Bruce responds, no, I don't want to die. He doesn't want to die. Getting through, not letting it crush you, is what we do here in Crime Alley. We're survivors, so Batman needs to be also. Understand? It's moments like this that like really make me appreciate the story more. Like, they feel human, which I've mentioned plenty of times here in my last video and in this video. This iteration of Batman, he feels human. It's easier to relate to someone in the struggle coming up from like the ground up rather than this rich bitch who like is averagely here. It's harder to relate to Batman because how many of you are billionaires? I mean, if you're a billionaire, donate me $1 million real quick, you know what I'm saying? But like, not many of you are billionaires. Like, it just is what it is. Anyways, remember Waylon's message from not only Bruce to survive, but also Batman to survive? Turns out he has taken that advice and he ends up bursting through the hole in the wall here, where when Freeze threw him against the wall, he ended up breaking it, but he escapes to fight another day, barreling through the air and calling Waylon. And he tells him, listen, there's something bad in the snow. I'll call the others, but I will fill you in. But he also tells Waylon that he was right and even thanks him. Again, it's moments like this that just make the whole story, the whole of Batman, just feel a little bit more human. And it's kind of refreshing, to be honest with you. It doesn't just feel like this unfeeling machine, and only when major traumatic events are happening that we get to see emotions from him. This is refreshing. But these final pages show us Waylon, who's being taken by men who are most likely the same people that Freeze was talking to before Batman burst through his door. I'm assuming that these guys are going to Arkham and are taking Waylon to Arkham. I'm assuming here. But this next chapter eventually is going to fully bring us to Bane, which is something that I am really excited about. It'll be the first major arc for Absolute Batman from what I'm hearing, from what Scott Snyder's been saying on Twitter. You should follow him on Twitter. He's very vocal about this, and I'm very excited to see where all this is going. But anyways, if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more manga and comic book content. Recommend me some stuff down in the comments below, and I might read it. Who knows? I might not. I might just call you a nerd and leave you alone. Anyways, I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Much fucking love. Big fucking kisses. Peace.